not exactly motorcycle weather this morning, but that's what we're going to mess with. We're just not going to ride them today. So let's get in the warm shop. I'm going to start the crankshaft rebuild today. I've got it set up over here in the lathe right now. See if I can get you down here, we can see a little better. What I'm doing is I'm just checking everything before I take it apart. And right now, as you can see, I've got it set up on the seal area over here and the seal area bearing area over here. And as I turn this around, you can see that this one here never moves. There's a slight deflection there, but not much. I'm calling that one 0. The other side, the flywheel side, I'm getting about 1.5 thou. That's all there is on that one. So that's what I'm looking at before I go in. Now let me get you up here to the bench. I'm going to go over some preliminaries here. I made a note of how it checked out on the lathe, and now I'm measuring here the side gap between the rod and the thrust washer, checking it on both sides, and we're tight at, I think you can see that, at 16 thousandths. So we'll make a note of that. Side play, 16 thousandths. And another measurement we're going to look at is this measurement here, right at the rod bearing. And I'm measuring 2.209, 2.209, and then we're going to take this and look at it at about 180 degrees over here on the opposite side. And I'm getting see if we can get some consistency here. I think that's where we're at. That's 2209 there too. So 20 or 2.209 at the bearing or the pin, and then the opposite. Okay, so everything else looks good on this. So that just gives us a starting reference. So now I'm going to get you over to the press and we're going to take this apart. So stand by just a minute. Alright, one thing I noticed when I was looking at this is that this hole right here, apparently it looks like it may be an alignment hole. I'm sure that it's actually a balance hole, just like this one on the other side, but it's close enough that I made a pin up that would fit the hole pretty snug, and it almost goes through. It just barely stops right here. So what I'm doing is I'm going to use this pin as a ballpark place to get the flywheel back, or the crankshaft back to, when I reassemble it. So it'll get me close. I'll still have to adjust it some, but I think it'll help me get a better alignment. So that's what that's about. Now, what I've also done in the past, if you're trying to push out this pin through both of these at one time, there's a couple problems with it. Number one, it's going to take twice as much effort to push it through both of these at the same time. So consequently, what I did was I cut a plate, and I've seen a few of these others like this. I'm not the inventor of this by any means, but I just took a piece of flat steel and put it on the milling machine and cut this down so that I could get it into here. Now the other problem that you run into trying to push this pin through both of these at the same time is if you've got damage in here, which this one may have. It looks like it's pretty dry and kind of rusty in there. What you're doing is you're pushing the pin through these two flywheel halves, and the one side is going to get the blunt of all this damage here. So you're going to tear up this side of the flywheel. So this way we can do it one side at a time, and we're not subjecting the flywheel either side to damage as we remove this. And it does seem like it makes it easier. So what I've done is I've just made it so I can get this in, and I get it as close as I can. I make sure that the rod is clear, because I don't want to damage it. And I turn down a pin here that will get me through this, or get the pin pushed out. Get this close. Rod's still clear. And one thing that I like to do is I like to kind of hold this thing down. I'm going to clamp it, because when these things pop, a lot of times they just really jump everywhere. So we don't want to lose our crankshaft on the floor if we can help it. So let's try it. Not quite lined up right. Okay, looks like we're good there now. All right, let's see what she does. See what I mean? Everything goes flying. Kind of over here close to my shaft. I think I'm all right, but I'm going to back it off and move it just a little bit. I just don't want to damage that. And I've got a hold of it on the bottom. There we go. That's the first piece off, and we can get to the rod now. Our thrust washer, and our rod. Yeah, it's a little dry in there. Look at that. So there's what I'm talking about. If we were to push this pin straight on through here, we would be subjecting it to all this pitting and roughness here that would create an oversized condition on this side of the flywheel. So we're going to push it out the other way. So let's get that set up. Good. I don't care about the pin. Oh. And there's our pin, and there's all the damage that we would have subjected that crank shaft half to if we'd pushed all that through. So that's why I built this. It seemed like a logical thing when I heard about it, and I do believe it's worth its weight in gold. You saw how hard that did pop, so it was under tremendous pressure, and that was just one side. So if we'd pushed both sides at one time, it probably would have been double that. So let's go up and see what the rest of this looks like. All right, a little better view maybe of the parts that came out of this one. The pin, the old crusty bearing, and the two thrust washers, and the rod. Absolutely none of this stuff any good. But these are. So that's where we're at. I got a new rod kit for this. Evidently this fits the TS100 also. 100, 125, TC, TS, and possibly even the TM. I'm not real sure on that though. But anyhow, I ordered it online. I got it out of Thailand. And you know, used to I was kind of skeptical about buying stuff from overseas, but because it took so long to get it usually. But certainly wasn't the case. This is a long manufactured product, and it's made in Japan. And these are pretty well known over the internet for being a good solid piece. And this one cost me, I think, $35 and about $20 to ship it, and it was here in 7 days. So, and one thing, you know, I guess what I'm thinking is maybe other people were kind of skeptical about it too. So what I'm saying is don't be. I've ordered the stuff that I've been ordering out of Thailand, steel rims, this connecting rod, some others like spokes, that sort of stuff. It's quickly shipped, and it arrives here within a day or two in the States, and then it takes 3 or 4 more days to get from wherever it comes into customs. But one thing about the rod kits is they do not come with thrust washers. Suzuki still has them, and these are $2.50 a piece. So make sure you pick up some thrust washers to go along with the bearings. But one thing they do come with is a top bearing too. You get the rod, the bearing, the pin, and the upper rod bearing. So you just need the thrust washers to complete the job. And we're just going to compare this, and it apparently is an exact piece. So I think it's safe to assume that we're gonna have what we want when we put it together. Now this is a spare crankshaft, and I'm probably going to use it for this build. This was the one that came out of it, and I've already been through it. If you remember, it had a bad, this part right here that goes under the flywheel, it had spun, and I was able to find this half online, eBay. So what I did with this one, the rod and everything was perfectly fine in it. I did go and source out 2 new thrust washers, but I did the same thing, only popped half of it apart. I pulled this piece off here because that's what I needed to replace, so I just left the pin in place, and then took it back over to the press and pressed it all together. But the only difference was I didn't have to press both halves. So this is a spare one, or I may use it. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. But I'm fixing both of them, so I've got them. So I think next thing for me to do is to get this one all cleaned up, and then we'll get back over to the press and see if we can put it back together. All right, now, a couple of things. We're getting ready to press this in the one side. And one thing you need to remember is that there's a hole on both sides. You can't screw this one up. If you've got one that has a pin, or you've got a pin like the original one, there's no hole on one side. So you got to make sure that the hole is on the side that the flywheel goes on, because that's where your oil slinger goes in there. So make sure that you've got it oriented right. Okay, now we're getting this crankshaft ready to assemble, and you need to go in. I use some pre-lube. It's a little thicker. Lubricate everything first, and then assemble it. There we go. Remember, you got 2 washers, one on each side, the bearing and the rod that's got to go in there. And the one thing I want to point out is on the original rod pin, you got a hole on one side and no hole on the other side. So if you happen to be using a Suzuki one, you want to make sure that you've got the hole on the side of the flywheel, because that's where the slinger goes. It'll actually hooks into there, and it hooks into this hole right here in this half of the crankshaft. So be aware of that. And you can still get, you can still get the rod. I think it's about $60. Of course, the thrust washers you can get, but the last time I looked, the pin was about $42 by itself, and it was discontinued. So you're kind of stuck with this kind of a deal here. And like I said before, this I think this is a good deal. I've used these rods in the past on Yamahas and have had no problem. So, and with them being shipped and over here in 7 or 8 days, you just can't beat it. For $35, actually, by the time you get it, you're looking at about $55, and you can't even buy the rod from the rod from Suzuki for that. So Now what we're going to do is I've got this pin stuck in here, and it's got a little drag to it. It's not terribly tight, and I'm only going to leave it in there for a little bit, just long enough to get it started so everything is straight. I'm just going to, I've got all my pieces there. I stick the pin in that hole, and this pin, the rod pin is started in the flywheel. So we're going to start the press right there, and then we'll pull the pin before we go down very far. That way we're really close. I think that's it really worked good on this one, so I think that's something you should look at instead of being off several degrees and having to beat it around so much. But you have to do that anyway to get the things straight and in line. But this will get us in the ballpark. All right, we're back over to the press, and I've got my 2 washers, my rod, and my bearing installed. And I've got this over here where I can kind of keep an eye on it. I don't want it to get in a bind or anything. And I've got the alignment pin installed. It's on the back side there. And we're just gonna start it. I apologize. A while ago, I put in the other side, the pin in the other side of the crankshaft half, and I didn't have the volume on my camera. Didn't have it on, so I'll probably show it to you, but you won't be able to hear it. So much for that. But hopefully it's on now, and you can hear it, the pressure that it takes to put them in. All right, let's give this a whirl now. Okay, now I'm going to take that pin out since I'm started. There's our pin right there. Pin. Moving on. Okay, I've got to get my feeler gauge so I can see I'm leaving the right amount of gap. Okay, I'm going to put a little wedge in here because I don't want it to pop down too far because I'm real close to, can't see where I'm at, there we go. Put a little wedge in there so I don't overdo it because I feel like I'm real close. what I was trying to avoid. Still loose, but I think it's overdone it. Yeah, just popped on me. Okay, what I did was just go over there and wedged it a little bit, and I think I'm still a little tight, but we'll see. See what I end up with here. $13 goes good. It really doesn't seem to give it gives what they call a shake, which is this number here, and I'll look at that, but usually if you can just get it back to where it's supposed to, or where it was. Well, I guess I don't have a 14 on here. What in the world's up with that? Yeah, 15 will start. Yeah, I think we'll see. Let's get back over to the bench. Okay, I've got it set up over in the lathe. It it doesn't give me a gap between here. Like I say, I usually just set it where it was. This one is specking out at about 14. It was 16 if you remember right when we tore it apart. So it's actually 15 might be a little better. Yep. No, you got to watch where that groove is in there. I was in the middle of it. I thought I had it at 14. Good tight 14. So what the book tells me is that you set it up between centers like this, and they call it the shake. You've got it all the way to one side, and then you push it to the other side. and we're looking at about 40, 41, 42 thousandths. Okay, that's what they're talking about. And the book tells me that if it's over 0.118 or 3 millimeter, then you need to repair it. So evidently there's quite a bit of room for error here. You know, 16 probably would have been good, but we're at about 40, I'd say 40 thousandths. So I think we're good. You don't want it too tight because, you know, you got to remember as this heats up, everything's going to expand and it's going to close up the space. So all they're really concerned about is too much. So since we've got it set up, I think this is acceptable the way I look at it. And let's see if I can get this back. I need to change the tip again. All right, let's find our low spot on the left side. Right there, it looks like. So we're looking at about 8 run out on that side. Let's find the low spot on this other side. Right there. And we're at 15 thousandths run out on that side. So we're going to have a lot of adjusting to do. I mean, it seems like a lot. It probably won't be that much. But you can definitely tell that it's out quite a bit. So, I think my first plan of attack is this side that's the worst. And this is telling me with the rod to the front that I need to whack that right one because it's twisted up. So I need to whack it right about here with a brass hammer to see if we can break that or bring that down a little bit. So let me give that a try real quick and see how much difference that will make. Definitely moved it. Either I bumped it. Yeah, I think I bumped it. No, I'm not. I didn't have my centers tight. Okay. And probably bumped it too. Okay, so we're at about 13 over there. So I made some headway. Now, let's see, widest point still there, so I'm gonna whack that again. filled about 13. Now, let me work on this a little bit and then I'll bring you back, let you know what I did. I'll just show you here once what we do to adjust it. It's telling me I'm a little high here, so since you're on a kind of an eccentric here, we want to twist that a little bit, and it's not going to twist very easy. You got to whack them pretty hard. That's what you got to do. So now I've got to check it again and just keep doing this until I get close. Okay, got it back in here. Let's see. It's a little closer than it was. Right now I've got 4 on the left side with the rod in the back. That's telling me I'm probably going to have to whack this one right here a little bit. And on the other side, right here, I've got 2 with the rod in the front. So it's telling me I'm probably going to have to whack that one right back there. Now when you move one, most cases you'll move the other one a little bit, so it will get a little frustrating sometimes. So far this one, I've only whacked it 3 times, I think, and I've got it pretty close. The tolerance is just under 4 thousandths. I believe it's 0.00395. So it's just a little under 4 thousandths. So you can technically have 3 on one side and 1 on the other or something like that and still be okay. But the idea is to get it as close as you can. So let me get back to it a little bit and I'll bring you back. Okay, I've got 5 whacks on it, and I've got just about 1 thousandths on the left side with the rod to the front. So that would indicate another hit right here if I want to do it. And on the right, I've got 1 thousandths with the rod to the back. So that would indicate another strike right here. But I'm telling you, at 2, I don't know whether I want to mess with it. You could chase it forever. I think 2 is going to work for me. I've done them before where you try to get them closer and you end up knocking them the other way. So sometimes it's good to accept non-perfection, I guess. That's pretty darn close. 5 strikes with a hammer and we're good to go. Now, one thing that probably won't happen is, let me find my pen. My alignment pin that I made to put it together with. Let's see if it'll go through. Nope. That's just about how it was before. And what was it we had before? I think we had was it 0 on one side and 2 or 2.5, something like that on the other. I'll have to go back and read watch the video. But this is very close going through, but it's just like it was before. The 2 holes are there, but you just can't hardly get it through both of them. So I think I'm happy with that. 2 thousandths total. Works for me. Now, the next step here is to put our oil slinger in. And again, if you had the Suzuki pin, you want to darn sure make sure you've got the hole in the pin on this side. But with the aftermarket one, foolproof. Now the slinger, this one is probably okay. I don't see any cracks or anything with it. But if I was to reuse this one, I think I would take a taper punch like this and just swell it a little bit so that it would grab. But I found the new old stock one. And these just, one of the little tits go in there and the other one goes over here. So just get you a punch and slowly work it in there. Knock it down till it seats. So there you get your slinger. That's why you don't use that, and the fact that there's another one of these on the bearing itself. That's why you don't use premix on a Suzuki, because you're not going to get the benefit of the oil from your oil injector right here. It could starve. I've heard that. You also want to remember that you've got another spacer that goes on there. This side didn't get one. So there's our crankshaft, and I think we're ready to go. I've got the transmission and everything ready to go back together. So I guess that's the next step. We'll install this and we'll install the transmission. So thanks for going along for the ride today. We'll get back on it tomorrow.